Hi there, welcome to Real Life on the Homestead in Ontario, and I'm Marie. It is a really nice sunny day, but it is cool. The mornings are super cool, and we had quite the rainstorm last night. So it's time to pick our herbs before we lose them. And I have had lots of requests on how do I make my Italian seasoning that I normally use in a lot of my recipes. Well, sorry, I have zero formula. I pick based on what I like and what makes sense. For example, sage is super strong herb, so I put very little in there. Basil, thyme, oregano, I add a lot of those together. But let me show you what I'm doing in the garden and how I pick these herbs for drying. As you can see, I've been clearing out the beds, and I don't know, just little by little. It seems overwhelming some days. Our basil is still doing really beautiful, but this here, the flowering bit, that's what I love to use for my dry herbs. The leaves I like to freeze whole so that I could use them in cooking afterward. They stay really nice when you freeze them. They turn kind of black when you dry them or dehydrate them. But these here, these little bits are perfect for drying. I'm still collecting cherry tomatoes. See how many I still have that are green. As they get to, let me just pull one out for you. As they get to this point, I pick them and then ripen them indoors, because this is pretty much as ripe as it's going to get on the vine before it gets damaged. Let me walk you over to tomatoes and just show you what I've still got to deal with. These were our volunteer tomatoes from seeds from our last year's crop. And aren't they doing beautiful? Now, leaving them on the vine to ripen is not the best idea at this time of year. And I will do a video on ripening these tomatoes and a little bit of explanation on how ripening of tomatoes and vine ripe tomatoes and all the myths involved. But that's a different video. If I leave these on there, see this? This is what happens. So we're going to avoid that. And then, of course, down here, I got to prepare this bed to plant our garlic for next year. Did really, really well this year, so definitely want to get that in there for next year. So for the dry herb mix, I am going to be picking all these flowers out of the basil. And as you can see, got lots and lots happening. Look at this batch here. Those are all perfect for the basil portion of our mix. So there we have it. This is the basil portion of our Italian seasoning mix. I've got some leaves in there because I'm not picking this being super picky. But as you can see, it's mainly the flowers that are going to go to seed. That's for my dry mix. These here, I'm going to be making some pesto and freezing. And instead of repeating myself, what I'm going to do is I will link in the description box how I make my evergreen pesto and how to store it. So look in the description box for that information. Now let's take a walk over to the herb garden and we'll pick some other herbs for this mix. As we can see, the herb garden is definitely drying up. This is all my oregano, and it's not looking too great now. There is my savory. Tarragon's gone. And the parsley's gone to seed, which is great because I want the seeds to fall here so it grows next year. My thyme did not do very well this year, and I don't use any pesticides or herbicides, so there's a lot of grass in here. But that's all the thyme I had. I will be picking that for next year. And of course the sage does beautiful. There is no way I need all this sage in my mix, so I will pick some, mix it in with the other herbs, and then I'll just do some plain sage. Sage grows best if you cut it right back, so I will be doing that. So I have got some summer savory, some winter savory, and I'll just be picking a bunch of that and throwing it in. So here we have it. I have cut back my savory, and that helps it grow next year as well. There's a pile that I will just dry as plain savory, and then for my mix, I've added it in. Now, I originally called this Italian seasoning. I don't know why I'd call it Italian seasoning, because the truth is, it's just more of a mixed herb. And I mix in everything that I enjoy. No, the picture's not the best quality for this because it just looks like a bunch of shrubbery. But here you see how I've cut everything back. So that is the savory gone. I'm gonna move on to, are you kidding me? Get out of there, Heidi. Get out, go. Now I throw my bits underneath the deck and the dogs go in there and steal them and run around with them. But I am moving on to my oregano, and I will do the same. Cut it back, add some to my mixed herb pot, keep some just as oregano. So there's my big bush, and here is the one I've cut back, and see how there is so much new growth under there already. That's going to be beautiful for next year without all those woody parts. Now, why am I not showing you cutting every stem one by one? Because I really don't want to set up a tripod, and you don't need to watch me cut pieces of stems over and over to make a longer video. So I am actually just going to continue on with the oregano. There's my bunch to dry as oregano, and of course I have added it to my pail for my mixed herbs. Now let me show you how I grow my rosemary. Here it is. I keep it in a pot, and I take this pot inside every year. I've now had this one for 4 years. I cut it back regularly. I use it fresh. I am going to take a bunch of it and add it to my dry herb mix, and it works really well. But this friend comes in for the winter just because our climate does not allow for me to leave it outside and ensure that it comes back. Most of the times it would not. And since I'm up on the deck, I may as well show you my laurel. This died back quite a bit last year, so it is quite small, where it was like 4 feet tall before. Anyway, I take some of these leaves, mix them into my dry herbs as well, but I love fresh laurel. And because of our climate, this needs to go in for the winter as well, and that's why I keep it in a pail. So, pail, vase, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, this goes in for the winter as well as my rosemary. But let's continue on. We're going to get all these herbs picked. I'm not going to show you picking the sage because there's no need for that. And I'll just show you how I dry everything. Well, there we go. All cut back. Ready to go inside. I think I will, before going in and drying everything up, I think I am going to move this thyme plant, which didn't do that well, to another spot for next year. But as you see, everything is nicely cut back, ready for winter and to bloom next year. Well, we're done picking. And because I don't have measurements, and I'm gonna let you choose based on your palate, herbs you like the best, I am gonna show you what I ended up with for myself. So this way you have an idea of what you may wanna do for yourself. Now, I am a huge promoter of recycle, reuse. So use a container that you have. This here, when I was working, I had lots of these stacked up in the closet. They're shoe boxes. They work perfect for this. Now this one here happens to have a little ding in it. As you can see, it's a hole. Does that mean it's in the garbage? Absolutely friggin' not. I have an extra label from when I made something, and I am just gonna stick that on the bottom. There we go. It is not solved. It is exactly what I need it to be. a sticker on the bottom of my box. Anyway, so when I say sage is very strong, this is all I'm using. I don't like an overpowering sage flavor through my mixed herbs. So this is a lot. Actually, you know what? I'm cutting it in half. This is all I'm going to use. And for drying, I am going to air dry. So I'm just going to cut this in just to make it a little bit easier to dry up. I will run this through my food processor when everything's dry. Just a couple of pulses, just to get an idea. Rosemary, I love. So I am going to use this rosemary. So that's a handful. What I'm going to do is just pluck it off the stem. And you know what? This is a trick I love to do. Don't throw the stems away. When you're cooking a roast or some chicken, stick the stems throughout your meat. Gives amazing flavor. Honestly, don't throw anything away that you can use. So I'm just gonna really quickly, I'm not gonna do them all. I'm not gonna extend the video by showing you every little step. But here, you don't care what I look like, you wanna see what I'm doing. So I have quite a bit, but I'm going to just do that off camera. Just wanna show you approximately what I'm putting in. Just want to make sure you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so I will continue on with the rest of this rosemary after. This is some of our chilies that I had dried. See that? I'm going to throw in a handful and a little extra because I love that stuff. Our bay leaves that I had dried earlier, these were in every spring, all the leaves fall off the bay leaf or laurel tree. So what I do is I save them. Now I'm going to these are already dry. I'm going to just crumble them in here. And then oregano. I am just going to pull it off the stem. These stems I don't save. So put those aside. I am using this much oregano. Really, I can't give you measurements because it's whatever we're picking. Savory, I like a bit, but not a huge amount. This is the amount of savory I'm going to use. And for this, again, I'm going to pull it off the stems just because it dries up a little bit nicer. So I'm going to put that aside because I'll finish that again off camera. The basil. First thing we picked. Some of these leaves are going to be larger because I was picking off the top, but these are my favorite. They're the little sprouts that we're going to go to seed. These work so well in here. I'm going to pluck all those in, and I use a lot of the basil. So this is the quantity of basil I have, and there's some more in the bucket. Flowering wise, I will fill up this container, leave it without the lid in a cool, dry place. So not a cold cellar where it's moist because I want it to air dry. When everything is dry, I pulse it a couple of times in the food processor, and let me show you what things end up looking like later. So here you go. That is my batch from last year. It has a bit of dried garlic, but this year I'm not going to add that in. I'll add the garlic as I cook, and you can see everything else. Why go and purchase store-bought if you don't need to? I'll just throw that in here. Here's our batch all done. Now it's quite thick. So I will make sure to toss this regularly because I want to get rid of that moisture. It's not hard to do. Just pick your herbs before the winter gets them. Enjoy them all year. Avoid prepackaged, high sodium seasoning mixes. Make your own. Enjoy it. Live your best life. please share this video with your friends. I'm not asking you to support through any kind of funding. I just want you to share with your friends. And we'll see you next time. Remember, I'm going to be harvesting those green tomatoes and ripening them. You may want to stick around for that one. Take care.